Welcome to another episode of the Cubic Report. My name is Victor Cubic. With me today is Loren Oesterly, who lives in Azusa, California. He lives in the area where the Great Fire of Los Angeles is taking place. It's 1 week now into the fire. The fire began on January 7th at 10:40 a.m., and today is a week later, Tuesday. We're very, very grateful for how God has spared people, but also we are very, very troubled by the difficulty and suffering that people have gone through. My guest is Loren Oesterly, who lives in Azusa. He is a member of the United Church of God in Los Angeles. He's a person I've communicated with the last several days because he is also the treasurer of the church and also very much involved in distribution of aid that's coming from all parts of the country and the world to help those who are suffering in this tragedy. So welcome, Loren, to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, we're very glad to have you and are thankful that you are able to take the time with all the different things that you are doing. Your business is, you're a tax consultant or you prepare taxes, is that correct?
That is correct. We do corporate and personal taxes, and also I built my office to where we do bookkeeping, payroll, and also other things like notary and such. But one thing that's nice is I've been able to also employ some of the brethren to be able to help them out as well. And unfortunately, one of my employees has been displaced for now because of the fires, but hopefully she'll be back shortly.
Well, good. Well, I'm hopeful that everybody eventually will get placed back. Even the people who are finding that their home is okay, that many are displaced and are living in temporary conditions. But Lord, how are you personally affected by the fires? You live sort of on the edge or close to where the fires are?
Yes, that is right. I live in the Azusa Canyon, which is about 10 to 12 miles if you go directly, as they say, as the crow flies, from where the fire was erupted and was had started. It got close to us. Only the city next to us actually was on standby evacuation, but we were not told to evacuate. We were told to be ready, but not to evacuate. So we were blessed in that way. I do live in the actual Azusa Canyon where the mountains are such that we sort of live in a wind tunnel. And the winds even blow there when normally they don't blow anyplace else. So anytime there's a fire in the mountains or on the mountains, we tend to be concerned because those winds could blow the embers and do what happened in Altadena. However, we've been blessed so that any of the fires that we have had in the area, we have not had any winds that would cause more harm. And that seems to be the main problem, is the embers and the wind blowing them, causing other spot fires and other fires.
We've been watching Fox 11 television, wall-to-wall coverage of the fire, and at night it shows these embers blowing around. It's just like a snowstorm.
Yes.
With these embers going every which way, starting new fires. It was just very, very disconcerting. So we're very thankful that you are in good shape. I'm so grateful, too, that I've been able to connect with you. Your pastor, Frank Fish, told me about you, that you're the person, the go-to person on some of the things that we're talking about. And we want to be part of helping people. So tell us about some of the other people. How are they doing? Because that's one of the big questions that I had on Facebook from people today. How are people doing? What's going on?
Well, for the most part, people that have lost their homes, as we spoke about them, the Budges and the Norods, I am very impressed with the attitude that they have in spite of this horrific trial. They are remaining positive and they are planning to recover. And of course, we're all chipping in to try to help these people recover. We do have brethren and people that they did not lose their homes, but they've been going without electricity or power for the last 3, 4, sometimes 5 days, which obviously we know is it's an inconvenience, but it also means that their food is spoiling because they don't have refrigeration. The water in certain areas is and there are a lot of more than just inconveniences. It's really putting people to where they have to really rethink how they're living. One thing that this has brought about is we have most of us put on our mobile phones here in the area applications like Watch Duty and Pulse Point, which
Hmm.
give us updates. It's kind of alarming because every time we get a notice, we're like, oh no, is it coming our way, or are we in? Is it in our area? So we are all kind of on edge, not knowing when you have fires like this in drought conditions to where they can fire up very easily. We're always on edge because we just don't know which way the winds are going to blow. So we all have to be vigilant. We have to be aware. And the one nice thing about it though is people are helping other people.
Hmm.
We do have some unfortunate people that are looting and are doing things that they shouldn't be. But for the most part, most people are coming to each other's assistance. And as a matter of fact, I live in a neighborhood that is totally amazing because we text each other. We have a group text. We constantly keep each other posted.
Hmm.
And I know for myself, when I had COVID, I was out for 3 months because of I had to be on oxygen,
Mm.
kind of a similar disaster in a different way. And the neighbors all came to our rescue, providing meals, doing everything. And now what they have done is some of the local businesses are opening their doors and receiving water and clothing and furniture and other things that people need, and we're distributing it to the people in need. And as a matter of fact, the Rose Bowl and Santa Anita Racetrack, huge parking lots, they're so full of items that have been dropped off that they've had to actually tell people to hold off. And personally, I think that's a wonderful thing. The hard part is we got to make sure it's distributed in a proper way so that the right people get the help. And that seems to be a major issue is are the people that truly need help or assistance getting it?
Hmm.
So it is nice to see though that there's still good in this world. We know the world is got a lot of evil, but we also tragedies like this tend to pull people and the good part out, even if it's for a short period of time.
Well, we've been so impressed by Fox 11's coverage of very, very personal, poignant, personal interactions of people, and they look for the most part to be have been very healthy. I've gone through two, or been a witness to two different, two big tragedies here in the past couple of years. One is the war in Ukraine, which has
Yes.
pulled people together also in this way, in slow motion, as people there are helping one another, and different churches are helping one another. We have the Sabbath keepers that are distributing aid for us. It's an amazing, amazing process that we've started because of the war and because of a common enemy that has attacked us. And people put aside differences and grudges and different aspects of human nature to help one another. We've seen that in the Los Angeles area. It was also touching to see how people have been watching out for the ones who are less able. I know that there have been at least 25 people now who have died, but
Yes.
there were also stories about people coming and wheeling people out with wheelchairs and making sure that they were watched for, and somebody would remember somebody down the street. And there were just many, many heroic stories, and I'm sure there'll be far more stories be told.
Well, and you're right. What happens is things that seemed to matter a week ago don't seem to matter anymore. A lot of we get caught up, we are so blessed in this country that we get caught up in very petty things. And what this does, I mean, it's unfortunate and nobody likes a major trial, but let's face it, it causes us to rid ourselves of the petty things and start worrying about what's truly important. And the one thing I have seen and heard is how people are hugging each other more, they're contacting each other more. It's bringing people together Unfortunately, like many of us have experienced when we go to a funeral, we tend to run into people we don't haven't seen for years. And it's sad that a tragedy has to bring people together, but it also should be something we should be thinking about on a daily basis of trying to maintain that, hopefully without a tragedy.
So, in your church, as I was looking over the list of people, Frank Fish sent me the list of people. I knew almost every one of them except for the Norrods. That was one couple that I had not known. They lost their home. But
Hmm.
almost every single one of them I had known from the past and been in
Hmm.
contact. And of course, I knew Ted Budge very well, very well. And that was just such a horrible shock. In fact, I remember when they announced the Palisades fire, then they said, oh, there's another one breaking out in Eaton Canyon or in Eaton area. And I thought to myself, hey,
Right.
that's where the Budges live. I wonder if they're okay. And sure enough, they weren't. And that was so tragic to us. But again, I spoke to Kim a day or two after the fire, and I was just really impressed and humbled by the attitude that she projected. And of all the things, her husband gave the sermon, I guess, on the Sabbath after the fire. And I said, what do you need right now? She says, we need a printer to print off his sermon. And I
Yes.
thought, of all things, you know.
Yes, it's true. He was amazingly positive and even at times humorous.
Mm-hmm.
And I commend him for being able to be that way in spite of the loss that they have incurred. We were talking to them this weekend, and fire is really interesting because you have one home that just like the home next to them, the only thing that got destroyed was their garage. And homes around, some got fully destroyed and others were just standing there as if nothing happened. I find that amazing because you just don't know what's going to go and what's not. And we really have to be careful not to be judgmental. Unfortunately, a lot of people are judging others because of this, trying to say why some people had losses and other people hadn't. And really, it's neither there. You can't judge by what happened. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, what you got to do is be an example, which I think the Budges and the Norrods, who both lost their homes, are amazing examples. And it's interesting because I mentioned my close knit neighborhood that I live in. Many of them actually got to meet the Norrods because we invited them over for our Thanksgiving. My wife invited many of the brethren and neighbors for Thanksgiving. So it became more personal to a lot of our neighbors who met the Norrods at our house, which is another good thing about why you should bring people together because then you get that personal connection.
We're taught to be hospitable and entertain strangers even, and you kind of wonder why that. And that's the whole point. And when you have a situation like this develop, it brings the very best of people and the best of their stories. What One of the questions that has come up is how much aid is needed. I know that people have been very generous. As you know, my wife and I operate a nonprofit, and we've had just tremendous donations come to us
Mhm.
for the people. I mean, it's just been awesome. People I haven't heard from in a long time. Today, just many, many donations came through on PayPal. And we're just wondering to ourselves, what is needed? We can't just deliver things out there physically, which is probably not even practical. But what is it that people need?
Well, that's a good question. And when you really, I kind of mentioned or alluded to it earlier, that a lot of times we're getting plenty of aid and plenty of donations, but it's a matter of managing how we deliver it.
Mm-hmm.
And what we are doing as a Los Angeles congregation, what we are doing is we have given immediate aid to each of the people involved. So at least they can purchase groceries if they need it, or if they even though some of the people didn't lose their homes, they had to flee, and they're not being allowed back to their homes. So
Mm-hmm.
some don't even have clothing because there are certain things they need, or even things like toothpaste and other essentials that they maybe didn't pick up because they weren't sure where they were going or what was happening. And a lot of people ended up fleeing quickly. And so they did not have some of these essentials that they need. So what we've done is we've given a small assistance to each of the people, and we're telling them to use it wisely. And if they don't necessarily need it, they can always pass it on to somebody they see that they need, because they're going to see neighbors and people that we are unaware of that may need help.
Hmm.
And so we're advising them to pass it on. If you don't need it or are not going to be able to use some of it, please pass it on to people who can.
Hmm.
Because like you said, we can't be there for everybody, but we can form this network of people that we give a little bit to, and they can give a little more, little to others. Now, as far as what is going to be needed, it's too early to tell. We're communicating with each of the people involved so that we can find out what they truly need, and so that we can very wisely manage the assistance that we're giving out,
Hmm.
because we want to make sure we can maximize the usage of the assistance that we're receiving. And we are very thankful that we are getting assistance that we weren't aware of a couple of days ago, and we think it's wonderful. But we want to make sure we manage it appropriately,
Hmm.
and that is, I think, the key to all of this. And now some people are going to get government assistance, but it's going to take a little while. We just need to take it a step at a time and a day by day. And that's exactly what we're doing. So I find that Frank and myself will probably be busy for quite a number of days, because we can't do it all at once. We have to do it piecemeal.
And you have
And
to
that's,
and you have to learn what needs to be done by,
yeah,
by experience.
absolutely.
Well,
That's
may God bless you and your efforts. We are just, I'm just very, very astounded by the way that Frank is handling this, my conversations with him, and the way you're doing it. It really is marvelous. I've had other churches call me in the Church of
Mhm.
God network or the orbit that want to help out too. Have you had inklings, or have you had people contact you, or have you been able to help others from, we have a history of being a united church, but then we haven't always been united. And-
Right, right. And that's one thing I really truly like about the United Congregation is we are open. We are not a closed door. We are open if people need assistance or want to enter our midst. We're open to work with them and be with them. It's sort of like I mentioned, even in my own case, my wife especially, I give her the credit. We try to be, like you say, hospitable, not only to brethren, but to neighbors
Mhm.
and friends and coworkers, and in my business clientele, because we want to be an example to all those around us, not just the closed knit, uh, brother, only brother. We want to be an example to everyone. We often, as a matter of fact, for like night to be, we actually invite the neighbors. And it's interesting. They come and they talk to the brethren, and the brethren, they sometimes will ask, "Well, what's this all about?" And they'll enlighten them. And and the neighbors have gotten closer. I mean, they're not going to start attending, but they at least understand where we come from. And I think it's beautiful.
We were really touched also by the video that you made, Hearts of Sorrow, that Frank shared with us, and the wording was such that we could share it, so we did.
Mhm.
And I posted it on YouTube and through my Facebook page and X, and also, and had over 600 people on the first day that downloaded it. But it
Wow.
really was a tremendous, tremendous story. Did you write the music itself?
Well, here's the thing. I can't take total credit because it definitely was an inspiration. I give God the credit for sure. I have recently, and it's hard to explain because people don't quite understand, but I've recently come across technology that allows me to pretty much design what I want, and then it helps me build it. Because I even had some of the brethren ask, "Well, who's singing the song?" Well, kiddingly say it's Anthony Iglesias. His initials are AI, because a lot of it, yes, I know it's using technology, and people Some people get it, some people don't. What I did is, yes, I wanted it to say certain words and I wanted the music to match. Now, it doesn't always match, believe it or not. A lot of times it's a flop. But I believe that I had some guidance here and some blessings and inspiration because it came together so quickly and so amazingly. I was even amazed, and I can't take credit for that. But I even had some software that I hadn't used for a while. And so actually, I even perfected it a little bit more when I sent it to you because I had to truncate it a little bit because it has a little, at the end of it, it has a pretty much an empty spot. But my point is, if I can use technology or whatever tool it is to be able to offer something to the brethren and to the world that is a way of encouragement, and that's what I was shooting for because I was very moved. And I ended up when I started working on it, I couldn't quit. I just kept. I was up till the wee hours of the morning working on this stuff and saying to myself, I got to go to work the next day. What am I doing? But I was so passionate about it and so moved by it for myself that it brought me to tears. And I wasn't sure if I should share it or not. But then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to put it out there, even if it has flaws or anything else, because I do believe and want to encourage those who have suffered a lot more than I have.
Well, when you're so close to it, working on it, I know when I'm writing something or preparing something that I think, oh, what are people going to think about this thing? They don't think. They're just happy to hear the whole thing. And when I watched through it the first time, I thought, wow, that's really a professional production. And he said that we can use it because none of it is really copyrighted. And
Right.
I thought, wow, this got to be something that's from some commercial place because it was so good, so very, very good.
I appreciate it. And I will admit, I did go on YouTube just to check to see, and I uploaded another copy. So you probably see another copy out there. But one thing it did do is come back and say, well, we need to check it for copyright. And it came back and said, nope, you're good.
Hmm.
And I knew I would be because even though I used technology to do it, I'm the one who created it. And that's why I put created by.
Hmm.
I didn't write the music per se. And the lyrics, I kind of had help creating those, but I created it using the tools that are at my disposal.
Well, AI is amazing. I use it for fact checking. I use it for all kinds of things. We've had it puts things together so well. Haven't used it for music, but I use it for text. Talking about the distribution of aid by the government, I saw that FEMA has been there in the midst of the people, and they say that FEMA is actually helping to, or probably be a while, helping to pay the motel bills, hotel bills for people who are displaced
Hmm.
and that type of thing, which is good to know because we feel like people are just totally destitute, but there is aid out there, and people are being helped, and this thing will ultimately pass, as horrible as it is.
That
So,
is very true. It may take a while, and I have heard news articles where some people have been being declined and such. But the main thing is we have to all work through this because I think this is of a scale that even the government is having to really work hard to keep up with it.
it shows that there are firefighters and helpers coming from many countries, including Ukraine. I couldn't understand that.
Yes.
Do you know anything more about that? Is it Ukrainians in the U.S. or are they Ukrainians from Ukraine?
It could very well be from the actual country. I know that my wife being from Central America, they're sending people. I mean, these are countries that, quote unquote, you might think are third world, but they're sending help to the U.S. They're sending their any helicopters they have and other equipment and people to help out. And I just think it's wonderful that all these countries are coming together. I think I would hope that we could learn, although I don't think we will. I think it's short-lived, but I hope we could learn that, hey, we all can work together. It kind of brings me back to when Rodney King said, "Can we all get along?"
Mm-hmm.
And we really need to, as we know, this is probably not going to happen, but for the time being, we should. really embrace it, and I think it's a wonderful thing personally.
Where's the fire stand right now? It looks like a lot of it is still uncontained.
It's right. It's controlled to a certain extent, but not necessarily contained. Again, it's a lot less than what it was for sure. But the worry they have is even a small fire, if the winds are right, can grow quickly. And that's the big worry we have is I'll admit sometimes when I go to bed at night, my worry is I hope I'm not going to be awakened in the middle of the night that something has erupted. And that's the big worry.
Well, I lived in Pasadena for 5 years. I was working at church administration from 1990 to 95. And then I also went to Ambassador College there from 69, starting in
Mhm.
1967, I should say, or 66. I lose track of the years. And I graduated in 69. But Los Angeles area can be very, very dry. And we used to enjoy driving up to Mount Wilson. And,
Yes.
and but it was so dry around there. I thought somebody could throw out a cigarette. Somebody
Hmm.
could just inadvertently start a fire that way and cause a holocaust, a flame that is not even intentional. Los Angeles area really has too many people. There's,
Yes, that's true. I mean, it is a very desirable area to live. I mean, as you and I have spoken, I'm there because I got tired of winter. But but yeah, it's too many people cramming into it, and it's unfortunate that there aren't more areas that have the Mediterranean weather and the opportunities that they have here. But you can become saturated, and thus stuff like this really gets to be dangerous.
one thing I used to enjoy doing. I took sometimes I would take a day off and start at the bottom and at the end of one of the streets, Lake Avenue, I'm not sure which one, and that ends up at the mountain, foot of the mountain
Hmm.
there, and then walk up to the top of Mount Wilson. I used to enjoy doing that,
Yes.
just to kind of for exercise. It usually took about 4 or 5 hours, there and back,
Hmm.
but it is very very desolate, dry climate, and even though it's a city, the county itself has 9.1 million people.
Right.
And I suppose that Orange County probably is not as big population wise, but as another, how many millions of people. But it's a lot of people. The water has to all be brought in, and I don't really feel like it needs to grow anymore.
Well, that's true. Technically, in the LA and surrounding areas, I believe they say there's about 23 million people total. And like you say, we have to import the water because technically we live in the desert. This was a desert, and man has come in and helped make it more livable, but it's still a desert. Unfortunately, we tend to lose track of that. But when these things happen, we realize how dry it really is.
Can you perhaps, we maybe covered this or just touched on it, tell me what more people can do at this time? I know that people just, all they can do from so far away is to write a check or send some electronic money. What more can we do that's very practical? And there's another thing, too, maybe the second part of the question, is I find this in disaster relief, and I've been involved in tsunami relief and earthquakes relief and so forth. When the news first comes out, the donations pour in. They pour in. People with are very very generous, but then after the crisis dies down, the needs are still there. There's still
Right.
some very very big needs, but the news is not as exciting. Actually people get tired of it. They get tired of tsunami news. Right now, people are so tired of Ukraine news that they just close their ears. They don't want to hear it. But there are people dying every day over there that do need help. Perhaps you could comment on just the initial response and how people could perhaps maybe think about this or write this on their calendar to please help with this down the road.
Well, you're very accurate in that statement. And a good example is Ukraine. For a while, that was on everybody's mind. But we tend to forget that it's still going on, even though we don't hear about it because of stuff like this, a different disaster or other news. And you're right. It gets old and people tend to forget it, but the people that are involved directly are still involved.
Hmm.
They're still suffering and they're still having their issues. The one thing I would like to say, and I found a little bit or experienced a little bit of that myself. I again my video that I created has opened a lot of doors. I sent it out to several of my friends around the world and relatives around the world. Unfortunately, my relatives or my wife's relatives in Italy and Central America can't really understand what it says, but at least they get the drift. But I've had many people that I haven't communicated with for a long time. All of a sudden, we're communicating,
Hmm.
and I think that's a big deal right there. If you know of anybody in this area, if you know anybody that may be going through the situation, reach out to them. If you can't hug them physically, hug them from a distance.
Hmm.
Uh, talk to them. Try to catch up on things. I will admit that technology again today with, all the social sites and everything, the world is much smaller as far as communication, but make the effort and go through it as much as you can. Try to get a hold of people and try to offer moral support, if nothing else. I mean,
That's
you don't have to offer money or anything.
mhm.
Moral support is a big deal.
And that's so very right there. People on that list that really I have no real need before to really talk to, but there's some people who have been so helpful in some of our other projects. They're always very supportive with a lot of supportive comments on Facebook, like Marie Zelenka. I don't know her. I
Yeah.
may have met her, but she's had some damage that has taken place. But I plan to communicate with her. In fact, I did a little bit on Facebook.
Mhm.
But some of these people on that list would be good. Are there any other plans to help out other churches of God?
Well, we're not only helping other churches of God, where we meet for Sabbath. We've offered them assistance because some of their brethren who have nothing to do with our denomination or our Church of God have suffered,
Hmm.
and so we are offering them assistance to help out with their brethren as well.
That's marvelous. That's great to hear.
And we when the funds come in and as we receive the funds, again, part of managing it and part of properly using wisdom on distributing it, we really do plan to, if we hear of something, we plan to step in and see if we can help. We're not going to limit ourselves strictly. I mean, obviously, our congregation and brethren are a priority, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop there. I
Hmm.
think we're going to reach out if we see someone truly in need. We will do what we can to try to help them as well, no matter who they are or where they're what their situation is.
Well, that's really marvelous to hear. That really is. Frank, he was saying that he is using some of the connections with a Rotary Club that
Hmm.
he's a member of. I know many people there that just step up to help. I know that when the Ukraine war started, my Rotary Club really helped out a lot, in a
Hmm.
show of support with cash, at the very beginning. So that means a lot. That really lifts your spirit.
Well, and like I said, the key to this is pass it on. If
Hmm.
if we get assistance and we have the means to do so, we should pass it on. I think that if we see someone in need, I think that's the godly way and the way that we should handle it.
Lauren, it's just been really great talking to you and just getting your firsthand insights since you're right there at the edge of the fire, not only at the edge of the fire, but also managing the distribution. It's very good to hear these voices from you and from Frank and from other people. I talked to Robin Weber yesterday and had a good talk. He says he knows you quite well from
Yes.
over the years. And so it's just been very, very helpful. Are there any parting thoughts for this podcast?
Well, I guess what I did want to say is if we haven't learned anything from this, we need to realize that a lot of people question, and that if you notice part of my video, mentioned that some of the lingering questions. People wonder why. People wonder what why would God allow this? Why is this happening? And sometimes even when I've been able to speak, I've spoken on the fact that we know sort of God's plan, but we don't know every aspect of it. We
Mm.
don't know why people have to suffer. We don't know why we go through some of the things we go through, but God knows, and He has an overall plan. We may not know the day to day. And I know even in our own lives, my wife and I have often asked, why? Why is this happening? What have we done wrong? What's going on? We don't know, but we need to still remain positive, remain faithful, and still stick with the plan because we know that all things work together for good.
Hmm.
And as a matter of fact, I recently have created a song that kind of talks about that, and I might even share it with you after the podcast. I'll maybe send you a copy of it.
Okay.
And because through music, I want to try to tell people these, give these messages. Sometimes I admit the songs don't come out exactly what I want, but good enough that it still says the message. And so I guess that's the one thing I wanted to say is we don't know.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that things are not going the way they should be. And sometimes like we talk about silver linings in a cloud. We need to remain positive. We need to stick with it and keep faithful. And sometimes in my messages I've said that. You cannot be negative and have faith. They don't go together. That's like oil and water. You have to be positive if you're truly going to have true faith.
Great is his faithfulness, and his mercy never fails in the long term. I know that it
Yes.
may seem like empty words, and some people who are agnostic, whatever, may belittle that. But I know that I, in my life, have gone through various trials, very, very
Mhm.
dramatic
Mhm.
trials. The death of my parents at a very young age, my father dying
Mhm.
when I was at Ambassador College. I was the oldest of 5 children. And had the same question, why?
Mhm.
He was just baptized, just learning in the faith, and then dies of a heart attack at age 42. But I'm just trying to think of all the things that I have learned, and I know that I'll see him again, and that's the first person that I want to meet in the resurrection. But I'm saying that we don't really know all these things, but we do know what we should be doing. And I've gone back today to review some of the points in the sermon that I gave in 2017 at the Feast of Tabernacles about why
Mhm.
suffering and what is the point of suffering. And it's not something which is a clinical lab test. It's something that's real, and you have to face it. And the suffering that you're doing is something that Christ had already suffered with us, and he knows what you're going through. It isn't that he doesn't know. He knows, and he's right with you. You don't know it, but he is with you in your suffering. And if you understand that and understand the life of Job, and you understand other situations of crisis that have
Mhm.
taken place, of what they do to people and the refining of them, it is something to really think about. In this particular case, too, is why these people, there are a lot of really bad people out there who seem to get
Mhm.
away with things. But in the long term, it's all going to even out.
Right. Well, and I will admit, none of us will or have and will suffer what Christ went through.
Hmm.
I mean, we just can't imagine. And you're right. I think another thing that I do feel is as long as we keep faithful and humble, humility is the key.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, sometimes, trials like this can humble us too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just very humbling as we go through life as to perspective that we have. My wife and I were sitting here this morning saying that no matter what's happening in the world, we're at the top 5% of humanity right now as far as what we have and the
Right.
freedoms that we have, the country that we have. Let's be thankful for that and be on our knees thanking God for what we have, of what so many other people don't have and what they're going through, and have compassion for a new coming, for people as a new world is approaching.
Absolutely. I agree.
Well, Frank, once again, it's just been really marvelous talking to you, to have this perspective a week down the road, and I hope that we might even do it again to kind of catch up a little bit more and maybe have some more perspectives.
Yes, that would be fine. I would love to have that opportunity.
That'd be great. Well, you might want to be noting things that we could be talking about because I really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, me as well. And I hope things will go well, and all the best for all of us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We will conclude this podcast with a soundtrack to the song that was created by Loren Oesterly last week, Hearts of Sorrow. You can see the link to the video on YouTube in the show notes.
Under the shadows we gather forlorn. Beneath these clouds of sorrow worn. In the night when our hearts do break, we seek the dawn and hope to wake. Tears of anguish fall from the sky. Questions linger as we wonder why. In the ashes of dreams torn apart, we find the courage to restart. Lord, give us strength to carry through. In the midst of grief, our spirits renew. Comfort us with love and light. Guide us through this darker night. In the whispers of a gentle breeze, we feel your presence and find our ease. With every step we take in faith, we discover a light in our darkest place. When suffering binds us in its snare, with heavy hearts we turn to prayer. For in the silence of a solemn plea, we find the hope that sets us free. Lord, give us strength to carry through. In the midst of grief, our spirits renew. Comfort us with love and light. Guide us through this darkened night.
Thank you for joining us today. Please share this podcast and tell your friends about it. We can be found on a variety of platforms, including Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, and most other places where you get your podcasts. You can easily find us on any browser by simply typing in The Cubic Report. You can reach me by email at vic@cubic.org. vic@cubic.org. Have a great day.